When you write about ethos and rhetorical analysis, do you already know that you're cooked because you write some variation of the author uses ethos over and over and over, even though you know that doesn't make any sense? Is your friend Gwennifer writing fire rhetorical analysis about ethos and how authors use ethos to build credibility, while you're still writing about ethos as if it's something that authors automatically have or don't have? I'm Dr. Clay Zuba, inventor of Zubify. I've seen thousands of students make the same mistakes writing about ethos. Here's the key. Ethos isn't something that speakers automatically have or don't have. It's something that they build through specific rhetorical, textual choices. By the end of this video, you'll be writing with precision about how speakers construct ethos and credibility through what they actually do and say. Yes! Today, we're learning to write about ethos for rhetorical analysis essays on the AP Language and Composition exam. It's the first of a series that teaches writing about all three rhetorical appeals: ethos, pathos, and logos. In this video, you'll master what ethos actually is, how to identify it in text, and most importantly, how to write about it without falling into common mistakes that makes your analysis cooked. We'll be working once again with the 2025 rhetorical analysis prompt by Raquel Vasquez-Gilliland in her essay, Go Outside, Sink Your Feet into the Dirt, to see how speakers build credibility through textual choices. Now, let's learn to write about ethos like the queens and kings that you are. You've probably already learned that ethos is one of Aristotle's rhetorical appeals in that it corresponds roughly to the credibility of the speaker. But ethos is not credibility that speakers intrinsically have or don't have. It's credibility that speakers and writers build through specific rhetorical choices, and these rhetorical choices are visible to us in the text of their speeches or essays. For example, say you read a speech by a president. No matter what president that president doesn't automatically have credibility or not have credibility. You're thinking that the office of the president in itself commands respect, but that's not necessarily true. What about a divided nation, like our current one, or the one that Abe Lincoln spoke to? In that case, being the president actually worked against credibility, and in these cases, the speakers need to build the credibility through their text. Instead, a speaker establishes credibility through what they say and how they say it in their specific text. That's why your evidence for ethos must come from the text itself, what the speaker does, not who they are outside of the text. Think of ethos as building trust with someone. You don't automatically have the trust of an audience. No speaker does. If they did, they wouldn't need to make that speech or write a persuasive essay. Instead, you have to look for what the speaker says as they try to build trust as part of their persuasive tactics. Now, a speaker or writer can appeal to ethos through several types of textual moves. Here are the main categories to look for. 1. Expertise demonstration. Showing knowledge through technical language, specific facts, or demonstrating an understanding of their topic. 2. Personal experience sharing. Describing lived experiences that qualify the speaker to discuss that topic. 3. Shared values. Showing alignment with audience belief, concerns, or priorities. 4. Fair-mindedness. Acknowledging counter-arguments, showing balance, and considering multiple perspectives. And 5. Character demonstration. Showing honesty, integrity, transparency, or care for the audience. And 6. Association. Connecting to respected people, institutions, ideas, or traditions. When you spot these moves in a text, you've found the author's ethos-building strategies. Even once you find these strategies, though, when it comes to writing about them, warning lights should flash in your head, and you should really pay attention if your first instinct is to write any of these phrases or sentences. The speaker uses ethos. This speaker appeals to ethos. Gilliland has ethos because she's a poet. The president has credibility. None of these statements make any sense because a speaker makes rhetorical choices to appeal to ethos rather than having it. Instead of these phrases, write something like, Gilliland establishes credibility by sharing her grandmother's teachings. The author builds trust through acknowledging urban readers' time constraints. This choice creates authority by demonstrating deep knowledge of indigenous practices. See the difference? In these examples, you're analyzing textual evidence that shows how credibility gets built, not claiming speakers just have credibility automatically. And you're not referring to ethos abstractly, but instead being specific through what mechanism ethos is built and the type of credibility that the speaker is demonstrating. Here's your step-by-step strategy for writing strong ethos analysis. Step 1. Identify the specific textual move that builds credibility. Point to exact words, phrases, or choices in the text. Step 2. Name what credibility it builds. Is it expertise, shared values, character? Be specific about the kind of trust being established. Step 3. Explain explain how this builds trust with this specific audience. Don't just say it creates credibility. Show why this move works for these readers. The same moves for credibility will not work the same for all audiences or all speakers or all situations. Step 4, connect to the author's larger persuasive purpose. Show how building this credibility serves this overall argument. Here's a sophistication boost for you. The best ethos analysis explains why building this particular type of credibility matters for this rhetorical audience. For example, I have a PhD in English. This may impress you. However, this may not impress the members of my local plumbers union because they probably value the types of skills that are acquired through long periods of specific physical activities. Now, let's look at some sample analysis writing about ethos. Remember, we're looking at Raquel Vasquez-Gilliland's essay, Sink Your Feet into the Dirt, that we've studied in other examples in our rhetorical analysis series. Example 1. Gilliland uses ethos in her essay. She appeals to ethos by being a poet and a writer, which gives her credibility. The ethos works because she has an authority to write about nature. By using ethos, she makes readers trust her, which helps persuade them to agree with her argument about going outside. This example is completely cooked. It says uses ethos multiple times without identifying textual evidence, claims credibility comes from being a poet, not from the text, and it shows zero understanding of how credibility gets built through specific choices. You probably knew this as soon as I read this paragraph, but it's also the type of analysis I read over and over every year when I read AP essays. At the AP reading, here's a better example. Gilliland establishes credibility by sharing personal experiences with nature from her childhood. She describes how her grandmother, quote, taught me that the natural world around us has stories to tell if you listen closely, unquote, and shares the memory of watching her grandmother nurse a dove back to health. These personal anecdotes show that Gilliland has direct experiences with nature connection, which makes her advice feel more trustworthy. By sharing these stories, she demonstrates that she's not just theorizing about nature, but has actually lived these practices. This is a lot better, right? This analysis identifies specific textual evidence. It shows how Gilliland builds credibility through personal experience. But it's still not explaining why this type of credibility matters for this specific audience or how it overcomes rhetorical challenges that urban New York Times readers might face. Here's a clocked example. Gilliland establishes credibility through personal narratives that bridge indigenous wisdom and contemporary relevance. By sharing her grandmother's teaching that, quote, the natural world around us has stories if you listen closely, unquote, Gilliland demonstrates direct transmission of traditional ecological knowledge, establishing herself as an authentic voice on ancestral practices. This personal experience specifically addresses urban New York Times readers' potential skepticism about indigenous wisdom as outdated or mystical. Instead, Gilliland shows she has lived these practices and can translate them for modern contexts. Furthermore, her description of becoming an author whose life is built around stories creates dual credibility. She possesses both traditional knowledge and contemporary storytelling expertise her audience values. This layered credibility building serves Gilliland's rhetorical purpose by positioning her as uniquely qualified to make ancestral practices accessible to skeptical urban professionals. She's neither a detached academic theorizing about nature, nor a traditionalist dismissing modern life, but rather someone who embodies the bridge between words, but rather someone building the bridge between worlds that her essays advocate. Clock it! This sample identifies specific textual moves, names the specific type of credibility being built, and it explains why this matters for this audience's skepticism, and it connects it to the larger rhetorical purpose. Notice that here I was able to write a complex paragraph about ethos without using the word ethos, and in fact, this paragraph is stronger because it doesn't use ethos as a word, because that's just a vague category. Here are some common ethos mistakes to look out for. Mistake 1. Writing uses ethos without explaining the specific textual choice. Remember, no one can use ethos. One can only use rhetorical choices to appeal to ethos in others. Mistake 2. Citing credentials or authority that exist outside of the text. Mistake 3. Not explaining why this particular credibility matters for this particular audience. Mistake 4. Treating ethos as binary, like it's something you either have or you don't have, instead of showing how it gets built through rhetorical choices. When you write about how credibility gets constructed through contextual choices within a specific rhetorical situation, you're showing sophisticated analytical thinking. Yes. Remember, ethos isn't something speakers use or have. Instead, it's something they build through specific textual choices. In rhetorical analysis, your job is to identify those choices, explain what type of credibility they create, and show why that type of credibility matters for this specific audience and purpose. If you're not doing these things, you're doing something else. And if you're doing something else, you shouldn't bother doing that, because that's not what we're interested in rhetorical analysis writing. Next up, we'll tackle writing about logos with the same level of precision and sophistication that we just taught in writing about ethos. Yes. If you enjoyed learning about ethos in this video, remember to hit like and subscribe so you can keep learning about mastering rhetorical analysis. Yes. Thanks for watching Zubify. Come back for more Zubify.